The law that would allow police to utilize recordings retrieved from surveillance devices, otherwise called closed-circuit television or CCTV, for evidential purposes in criminal proceedings received its second reading in the House of Assembly, but is not yet passed into law. Premier Dr. Orlando Smith moved a motion for the second and third readings of the bill entitled Authorization of Surveillance Devices Act 2013. However, some legislators expressed concerns that the proposed legislation may undermine an individual's fundamental rights and freedoms. First District Representative Andrew Foy noted his support for measures to fight crime, but he also called for a deeper consultative process to ensure that the public is sufficiently informed about the implications of the new legislation before it becomes law.
Madam Speaker, the climate is right, Madam Speaker, to be negative towards what I'm saying, because you had the bombing in Boston and you had the murder in Langloop. So, Madam Speaker, at this time it would be, let us just move. What is the problem? And, Madam Speaker, when we're going to make such weighty decisions, the input, I'm not saying delay or we're trying to delay for any bad tactics, but to make sure that all the necessary input we could get into this bill was placed into it with consideration for many aspects. One of the areas, Madam Speaker, we want to make sure is that I read the bill and there's certain clause in it about making sure there's no abuse of the system, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, I still think, Madam Speaker, that more needs to be done, because I have seen bills similar to this passed in this Honorable House to help fight crime, to help make sure that we live in a safer environment. But then, Madam Speaker, I have also seen it put in place and the abuse of the law has taken place. And the citizens had no recourse to look at for the abuse of the law. Because the next time, Madam Speaker, most people see this information or feel it would be when they're in the courthouse. And, Madam Speaker, we have to prepare our people for these kind of changes.
The Authorization of Surveillance Devices Act 2013, which opposition leader Ralph O'Neill says was first drafted while the Virgin Islands Party administration was in office, would allow the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force to use recordings from the surveillance devices for evidential purposes in criminal proceedings. Deputy Premier Dr. Kedrick Pickering sees the bill as an important step in the fight against crime, though he alluded to concerns about the likelihood of infringements on individuals' privacy.
It says, arguably, a surveillance device is one of the most powerful tools to be developed during recent years to assist with efforts to combat crime and disorder whilst enhancing community safety. Equally, it may be regarded by some as the most potent infringement of people's liberty. If users, the owner and the manager of the surveillance device are to command the respect and support of the general public, the surveillance device shall not only be used with the utmost probity at all times, it shall be used in a manner which stands up to scrutiny and is accountable to the very people they are aiming to protect, unquote. To me, that encapsulates this legislation, because that is what we are dealing with here this afternoon. There is no question that this bill has some deep-seated concerns about privacy. And if you read through the bill, you'll understand that, hey, hold on a minute here, I ain't too comfortable with this part of this legislation. But against the background, Madam Speaker, of the recent Boston bombings, I don't think any of us have any doubts of the role that these devices can play. And that is the balancing act that we have to play when we are dealing with this piece of legislation and legislation of this nature. Madam Speaker, I put it to you that every single one of us in this room wants to live in a safe and secure environment.
After debating the bill on Tuesday night, legislators went into committee session to discuss the act, but the meeting ended while the House was still in committee session, and no date has been announced as to when the House will meet again. The Authorization of Surveillance Devices Act 2013 will have to wait until the House resumes its meeting and the bill is read a third time before it becomes a law. Acting Commissioner of Police David Morris, while addressing the Standing Finance Committee in December 2012, identified the lack of legislation to authorize the use of the CCTV system as a setback to improving crime fighting. In 2012, 16 of the CCTV cameras were installed at strategic locations throughout the territory, and another 13 was expected to be added. The police control room located at the Rotong Police Station is already set up, and police have been waiting on the enactment of the legislation that would allow CCTV material to be used for evidential purposes and for staffing of the control room.